What do Trump's new plans for Ukraine entail, and who is going to annex Canada? This and other topics we will discuss right now. It's our YouTube channel War and Politics 24. It's me, Irina Uzlova, and today I'm glad to see our guest. It's Yuri Rashkin, host of YouTube channel Rashkin Report, communication instructor in the University of Wisconsin, and a county supervisor in Rock County, Wisconsin. Yuri, hello, glad to see you. Thank you for joining.
Thank you, Irina. Glad to see you, and I'd like to welcome our regular listeners and viewers to our conversation. Let's discuss things that affect Ukraine, and let's figure out how things look from United States and how different do they look from Ukraine.
Yes, our fresh looking on all main topics of this day and another days too. So, new Trump's plans for Ukraine comes into focus. Reuters reported about 3 plans by Trump and his colleagues, territorial concessions, but NATO off the table. So, in every potential Trump plan, we actually, Yuri, see the issue of freezing war and not joining NATO. But these are the issues that are important for us and have no alternative, as our president report. How will we find consensus in this way?
I think there's a couple of things that should be acknowledged by looking at this basket of offers and conditions that the new administration is looking to bring to this war, in an attempt to, perhaps like you said, to freeze it, to create some kind of a peace for some kind of amount of time. There's parallels with World War II that come to mind with the Chamberlain and appeasement, but nonetheless, here we are in 2024, and it looks like the new administration is looking to find a way to pacify Vladimir Putin, who does not seem to be interested in being pacified. And that is the kind of the second issue here. So the first thing about the conditions that I think are important to kind of not just summarize, but to kind of categorize, to understand that what is being offered is what's in English referred to as sticks and carrots. Sometimes you need a stick, sometimes you need a carrot. But in this situation, it seems like Ukraine is getting all the sticks and Russia is getting all the carrots. And it is a situation that is not just not palatable for Ukraine, in my experience and my understanding of the situation, but it is not really sustainable because there is no evidence that Putin will follow any agreement that he has made ever. And so to think that in this situation where he already feels like he is in a position of strength and he needs to be, cowed to, and he needs to be shown that he is the person who has the most amount of influence here, the offer may just not be enough at this point. And that what brings me to the second point, which is the strength part of this. It's a big constant conversation whether there is a possibility of a falling out between Putin and Trump, because everything that we see right now is that Putin is demonstrating strength, showing Trump to be kind of weak. Trump would not like that, and so therefore he's going to do something about it. But as we see over and over, beginning with the future First Lady pictures being shown on Russian TV, yes. There's a lot of disrespect, but it just doesn't connect. And if it doesn't connect, if Donald Trump does not see it, then I guess there is no problem. This is part of this creative reality that he has done such a magnificent job of creating around himself, and right now pulling the entire country into his reality. And so if there is strength, if strength matters, then this is going to look very strange, because United States are going to be offering something to Russia. Russia is so far appears to be rejecting it. And then United States is like running after Russia, trying to persuade. All of this can be fixed with one simple solution right now, and that is to arm Ukraine. Because if Ukraine is shown, if like these carrots and sticks are shown to be backed by commitment from the new administration to arm Ukraine now and until Putin comes to his senses and is willing to consider American terms, then that means arming Ukraine now. However, we're not just seeing it, we see resistance to it. We've seen months and months of delays that were attributed to opposition by former President Trump, who was opposed to aid to Ukraine. Therefore, if Putin thinks that his situation is, well, he can just wait because there is no more weapons that are going to be given to Ukraine, that's a very different equation than if Putin is looking at a situation and goes, wow, Ukraine is going to be seriously weaponized and prepared, and they're going to get everything they need in F-16s and ammunition and all the 155 millimeter shells that they need because they have such commitment from the United States. That would be a very different scenario. But so far, President Biden has made a new request of assistance for Ukraine, and if that stalls, if that doesn't pass, then I would not take that as a good sign or good signal about future funding of our ally, our partner Ukraine in this war, which everyone seems to agree that if we stop it on terms that don't, like Anthony Blinken says, false peace, then this is going to be not sustainable, and this will lead to more war, potentially more war. I'm hearing from people who are thinking about the age of their boys, children, and thinking about what does that mean about what kind of future conflicts they're going to be fighting in. This is not really a way that Americans are used to looking at future for their children. But then at the same time, the country is already going through the major changes and evaluations. Just look alone at what happened in South Korea, where for a few minutes, for a few hours, the situation was seemingly under military or under the martial law. And how quickly South Korea has rejected this, South Korean lawmakers. And there's a discussion right now in the United States saying that if the next president decides to go the same route, will there be the same level of resistance to this among American lawmakers as there was in South Korea? And there isn't that certainty. And that lack of certainty, I think, should also, I'm just describing what the conversations that are happening in the United States. So I think that should give people in Ukraine a better understanding of the chances that they have for support from the incoming administration one way or another. And if this is just going to be a bunch of sticks and bunch of carrots that were not taken by either side, then it does show America and the United States in a weaker position. But that's, those are consequences. We shall see. So far, there's a lot of uncertainty about various things, but there doesn't seem to be uncertainty about other things. There's uncertainty about markets, about tariffs, about even deportations, because it can financially, economically hurt the United States. But there doesn't seem to be any uncertainty about installing people in charge of Department of Defense and various important security agency that are responsible for security, essentially, in the United States. People that are going to be loyal to the next president and that are going to be committed to good relations, I think, with Russia on some level. And that's just all of those things, I think, are red flags. And I don't know how many red flags people need to see in order to go, maybe there's a red flag. But Soviet Union had a big red flag. Yes. And hopefully somebody saw that and somebody understood the danger of that. So let's hope.
And we understand that this war is not only war Russia against Ukraine. Russia most wants the West to surrender, and not only Ukrainian territories. And these wars belong not to me, but belong to our advisor of the Zelensky office, Mikhailo Podolyak. And Yuri, doesn't Trump understand these risks, for example, that Putin makes the whole world war, in fact?
it depends on what priorities there are. Because if there is what was described as at one point in the past as a Yalta II agreement, a division of the world where the big strong men sit down around the table and figure out what region belongs to whom, then that's part one. That is done reasonably peacefully. And then there could be war after that, and then there could be more war after that. Just looking at example of World War II, when at some point Hitler and Stalin, even though they made such good friends for a little while, in the end turned out that they couldn't be friends. The problem is that we are living in the world of nuclear weapons, and nuclear war could last 6 minutes. So there isn't much room for error, and I think United States chose to make ourselves very vulnerable to outside dangers, to internal threats, to external threats by selecting a president that for some reason people felt like and feel like they're supporting law and order by voting when they voted for Donald Trump. But I'm afraid what we're going to get is a lot more lawlessness and disorder and chaos, and no one really, I think even of the people that voted for Donald Trump are going to be not happy with the outcome, because what we're going to, last 4 years ended up with a pandemic. Not that it was, Donald Trump's fault, but I think that the fact that there was over 1 million people that passed away from that, it should have been such an important lesson for our country, and we didn't learn. I thought when we went to Vietnam, that after everything that happened there, we were going to learn a lesson, and we still went into Iraq twice. So I don't think that there's much lessons that are being learned, and I think perception of what is strength and what is weakness depends on your, control over media. If there is no independent media in the United States, and every media that is broadcasting says that we are winning and everything is great, it's on one hand, people will have for a while alternative sources like they actually do in Russia, where they can look at some other things that are not agreeing with the state line that is pushed on them through TV. Russian TV. But reality is it's safer to watch Russian TV because that's the state propaganda, and at least you know what is the official party line, so to say. So I think that what we're looking at in the United States is such potential turn to authoritarian rule if the country doesn't say, no, that's too much. But if the country says, no, let's try it a little bit more, let's see what happens next, then I think it's going to be hard for any other country to expect U.S. to come to our aid, because there will be such chaos within the United States. It will be difficult for us to participate in world affairs. It's going to be a very challenging time, and to say that the United States has always ... is just not going to work anymore. I think that United States has done its best effort, and it's going to, and apparently it's going to do things differently now. What does that mean for all of us? We're going to discuss with you.
Yes, and we'll see. And sometimes it's a pity, but history tends to repeat itself. So we must be careful, and all our politicians must be careful too. The head of the Zelensky office, Andriy Yermak, is in the United States and will have relevant, important meetings. How important is such trip and communication with Republicans before Trump's inauguration, and what can and should Ukraine offer Trump's office?
It is ordinarily would not be necessary to do these meetings, but in the situation that we are in, where we're looking at a very different policy towards Ukraine, and with a leader who is, extremely self-centered, I think is a fair assessment. It makes sense. I mean, France is already invited Donald Trump to appear at the reopening of Notre Dame Cathedral Because it's Trump. Because if it was Joe Biden, he wouldn't care if he was invited to this and not invited, you know. But I think in this case, I don't know that Donald Trump cares or not. But it is one of those opportunities where you want to reach out and see if you can build some kind of a bridge before it is torched the next tweet. So I think everybody's trying to figure out the new path forward. And it certainly is understandable that any representative of Ukrainian government is headed to Washington to find out how can Ukraine continue to work with the United States. Except I think it is important to also understand that we see that we are dealing with incoming administration that throughout the campaign, Donald Trump denied and disowned himself from so-called Project 2025, which was presented as effectively his agenda, to which he said, no, I don't know those people. I have nothing to do with this. And then now that he was elected president, we see that people that he appoints to various positions in government are key authors of this Project 2025. And clearly it is the agenda of the incoming administration, which they at the time denied, but now, well, fully are embracing. And so there has to be understanding that there is like a sales part and there's a reality, which is an old joke about, hell. And then so there's a part that's the sales and there's the part that's fulfillment. And we are now entering the fulfillment when it may not be exactly what you were sold, but here you go. That's just example of what's happening internally in the United States. The fact that right now the signals that Ukraine is getting from Donald Trump Jr., who was opposed to Ukraine getting long-range weapons, very strongly opposed, is a signal that the incoming administration is not particularly interested in helping Ukraine per se, period, because first of all, good relations with Vladimir Putin. Vladimir Putin wants Ukraine. So I'm very concerned that what we're seeing right now is kind of like stealing for time, where there's this like, let's talk, let's chat, let's wait, and then January 20th comes. And now there's a new administration, and please stop knocking at our door. And it's going to be, I think, Americans in America, in the United States, expect a sudden change of atmosphere when Donald Trump is sworn in, to the point that people who are actively investigating or opposing lawmakers, Donald Trump, President 45, are being advised to leave the country when he's being sworn in for a few days just to see how things go. I think in that situation, it's important to look at South Korea and see how they dealt with somebody who was trying to change democratic path to a more authoritarian path, and learned lessons. And I think it's important for everyone to just understand that new administration is not going to be concerned about maintaining America's reputation in the same way that the Democratic president would consider American reputation. Our society has become so divided that we see as purpose of government as two different functions, and what is respectable behavior by one standard, by Donald Trump's standard, is not respectable behavior by Joe Biden's standard, and vice versa. It's something to just be prepared for and consider what that means, while still looking for a way to connect with the incoming administration. And at the same time, as they're stalling for time, perhaps it will be important for Ukraine to stall for time as well. And diplomacy does have its place.
Propagandist Tucker Carlson interviews Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov in Moscow after interview with Putin on February this year. Yuri, why is he doing such things?
Well, first of all, because it works. Last time we heard about Tucker Carlson as a journalist, which he said himself he's not. So I guess as an interviewer, as a media persona was when he appeared at several rallies for Donald Trump prior to election, including Madison Square Garden rally. But prior to that, when he interviewed Vladimir Putin. So I think it makes a lot of sense that this bridge between Kremlin and the White House is being rapidly built, inflated and built and cemented. And there are interesting things that I recall about that interview shortly after which Alexei Navalny was murdered or died in Russian prison, was after the last interview that Tucker Carlson conducted with Putin. Because when the Kremlin regime looks at these media things and they judge that they're doing well, then they continue pushing further. And so I wonder what consequences will be this time of Mr. Tucker Carlson interviewing Mr. Lavrov. On the other hand, from purely informational point of view, it is very important for us as Americans to understand exactly what it is that Russia at least says, because we voted to, on some level, become a part of Russian Federation, and and that is very worrying to me, as having been born in the Soviet Union, to see that American voters decided to effectively rejoin the Russian Federation, rejoin because Alaska, I suppose, was once a Russian territory. But this is all jokes aside. We need to pay attention to Russian propaganda now. We really do. It's been something that in America for a long time we could laugh it off, but we no longer can. And it's important to understand that Russia has been in this place of being at war with the United States and NATO for a long time. And the fact that we don't acknowledge it doesn't mean that the war isn't being fought or that we're not losing. So I think it is important to understand that this is more than just media interest. This is, as Patrushev said, Donald Trump came to power thanks to certain obligations that he has to fulfill now. And perhaps Tucker Carlson going to Moscow is part of those, improving relations between United States and Russia.
So can we say that Russian propaganda is like a kind of strong weapon?
I think Russian propaganda is important to view because it clearly has an impact. When we look at the fact that Donald Trump has been citing Russian propaganda for a while, that Marjorie Taylor Greene cites Russian propaganda all the time, that Tulsi Gabbard has been accused of spreading Russian propaganda, and these are all very, very important people in American government. I feel like, paying attention to that Solovyov and other horrible people streaming and explaining, talking about nuclear threats, maybe Americans should listen to it and should hear it and understand that these people are very angry at us, and they are not taking, they're not really interested for, as Steve Bannon said, this is not some morning in America. This is serious evil stuff happening here.
Okay, Yuri, and what can we say about next situation? Trade and migrants, why Trump threatening Canada, and what's at stake?
I think that the remark with Canada is something that is going to be part of our kind of like a style, aesthetic. It's this kind of jokes that are kind of inappropriate. Because to joke with another person about their country being a 51st state and therefore a nice way to avoid paying a tariff would be considered inappropriate. But now times are changing, and that means that people should be not surprised, because I think part of why this is being done is to kind of test people to see what they're willing to put up with, and always pushing boundaries. This is just something that some of us perhaps have lost track of, because we had 4 years of administration that was trying to treat everyone with utmost respect, after which was which clearly did not help, and and they did not win. And in a democracy, you have to win. So if this is the winning approach, then I guess manners go out the window, because it's strength that matters now. It's not about doing the right thing. It's about doing whatever you want if you're strong enough. It's a test for America, because for generations, people were raised with the understanding that it is important, it is crucial to do the right thing. But now we're all being tested, because doing the right thing doesn't necessarily going to get you the victory and the result, because it might work out otherwise. Are people still willing to do the right thing and say the right things and treat each other with respect? We're going to find out.
Yuri, thank you very much for today's conversation. Thank you for your time and for your thoughts. See you next week. Goodbye.
Thank you, and take care.
Thank you. Yuri Rashkin, host of YouTube channel Rashkin Report, was with us. My name is Irina Uzlova. Guys, thank you for joining and for your viewing. See you next week. Goodbye.